Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin, check. You already know. Let's go. Golden Blooded is a college football YouTube channel for entertainment. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into our next college football video. Don't forget to send gear to represent your team. The address is P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. Yes, we are still doing that. Just wanted to put that reminder in there because I haven't reminded anybody here recently. Today on this video, I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about for the past couple days. Even some of my viewers and subscribers have been talking about the comment section, so I think it's worth discussing. And it goes back to whenever I made videos last year that West Virginia was headed to the ACC. We all know that didn't happen. And of course, nobody will let me forget that. The biggest mistake that I made in that was I gave a timeline. But in my defense, the sources that I was talking to who were close to the situation, they also gave me a timeline. I shouldn't have done that. But here's the thing. West Virginia and the ACC, they did talk. There was some type of discussion, and the ACC even laid some groundwork and some criteria for West Virginia to get the formal invite to the ACC. To my understanding, West Virginia had received the invite. That's what I understood. That's not what happened. West Virginia did not actually receive the invite. It's just West Virginia and the ACC were actually talking. So the question is, how did it fall apart, and who decided, nah, we don't want to go this route? Was it the ACC or was it West Virginia? Somebody said, nah, at least for now, we don't want to do this. And, you know, I've seen in the comment section where maybe it was the Big 12 just trying to get some information out of the ACC. Maybe the Big 12 was using West Virginia as bait for the ACC, because since then, we've heard that the ACC is in some big-time trouble. I've heard that the 8 teams needed to vote to dissolve the ACC grant of rights and completely get rid of the ACC. They do exist, including Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a nuke vote to dissolve the grant of rights and get rid of the ACC. And a lot of people have talked about this, like, you know, what if it was the Big 12 that sent West Virginia to the ACC to talk to the ACC just to try to figure out where they stood at the moment? That's a possibility. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but it's certainly possible. Maybe the Big 12 found out, you know, those teams exist, and now they're thinking, all right, so what teams out of the ACC can we grab? Because they know that the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to grab some teams as well. And I've done multiple videos on the members that the Big 12 could try to grab out of the ACC as far as attainable, and they would add value to the Big 12. Well, we all know Clemson and Florida State, that's not going to happen. Clemson and Florida State, if they leave the ACC, it will be to the SEC. I think North Carolina's off the board. And because North Carolina's off the board, I think Duke's off the board. I think wherever North Carolina goes, Duke will go as well. I think Georgia Tech is off the board. I think the Big Ten would be interested in Georgia Tech. That would give them a solid footprint in the Atlanta area. And Georgia Tech does have AAU status. I think Virginia's off the board. So the teams that are on the board that I think the Big 12 could grab would be a Pitt. That would be numero uno, lock in the backyard brawl into the Big 12. On top of that, you could get a Syracuse, you could get a Louisville, an NC State, a Wake Forest, and a Boston College, maybe a Miami Hurricanes if they're available. So those are the teams that I think are attainable. And of course, I've done many videos on that. Maybe that's what the Big 12 did. Maybe the Big 12 sent West Virginia into the ACC, try to figure out, hey, do those teams exist? That way, if they do exist, we can plan in the future to try to get teams that are attainable and could add value to the Big 12. That's definitely a possibility. I don't think that's 100% locked in the truth, but I think it's definitely possible. But the other side of the coin that I really don't like to talk about, but you have to talk about because there's two sides of the coin, is what if the ACC was just trying to get a feel on the Big 12, and they're actually thinking about inviting teams from the Big 12, but West Virginia is not on that list. This would be worst case scenario for West Virginia. Look, I'm okay with West Virginia being in the Big 12 as long as the Big 12 stays strong, and on top of that, they go out and get teams from the ACC. Because the Big 12, they're looking at strengthening the west side. They also need to strengthen the east side of the conference as well. We know that the Big 12 is interested in Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. possibly Oregon State and Washington State. We know the Big 12 would welcome in Washington and Oregon with open arms, but I think the Big 12 would be a stepping stone for Washington and Oregon. We know that Washington and Oregon have applied to the Big 10, so their ultimate goal is to get to the Big 10. Would the Big 12 be okay with just being a stepping stone for Washington and Oregon? I would be okay with that because I know that Washington and Oregon would make money for the Big 12, even if it's just for 5, 6, 7 years, whatever the case may be. I would be okay with that. The question is, would the Big 12 be okay with that? But they also need to strengthen the east side of the conference. So as far as West Virginia being in the Big 12, I'm fine with that. As long as the Big 12 remains a power conference, a strong conference, and looks to the east side of the conference to add to it, then I'm okay with it. Now, this would be worst case scenario because, number one, we would be in a Big 12, and number two, they would be getting invites to other teams in the Big 12. So not only would we be in the Big 12, but we would be in a Big 12 that's getting depleted from the ACC, and we're not on the list. Now, to me, that makes absolutely no sense because I think out of all the teams remaining, not named Oklahoma and Texas, West Virginia would bring the most value to the ACC if you're talking about teams from the Big 12. Maybe arguably TCU because TCU has been successful. That would be a footprint in the state of Texas. And we know that TCU is in the playoffs and they're playing for a national championship. So besides TCU, yes, I do think West Virginia would add the most value. So this scenario doesn't make much sense, but it would be the worst case scenario for West Virginia because we would be stuck in the Big 12, a depleted Big 12, not on the list to go to the ACC, which would make absolutely no sense. But yeah, that would be worst case scenario. And yes, you would see a total and complete meltdown from Golden Blue Dude. And I saw that in the comments section, man. That would be hilarious if the ACC invited a bunch of teams from the Big 12 and West Virginia wasn't on that list. I would love to see the meltdown videos from Golden Blue Dude if that ever happened. Well, I guarantee you, if that ever did happen, you would 100% see some meltdown videos from Golden Blue Dude because that would not be good at all. I would not like that. I would love West Virginia to be in the ACC, but if they're going to fall apart and the Big 12 can get teams from the ACC, then I'm okay with that as well. What I'm not okay with is if the Big 12 gets picked apart and West Virginia is not one of those teams that the ACC wants. That I would not be okay with. Well, Golden Blue Dude, the Big 12 could backfill with a Memphis, a San Diego State, a Fresno State, a South Florida, and East Carolina. Yeah, they could absolutely backfill, but the conference wouldn't be a strong conference, and I don't know if it would be able to retain a Power 5 status. I really don't. It depends on what teams the ACC gets from the Big 12 if the worst case scenario did happen. What if they grabbed an Oklahoma State? That is a strong footprint in the state of Oklahoma, and they have big-time boosters. Oklahoma State would make money for the ACC. What about Texas Tech? Yeah, that's a little west. That's about as far west in the state of Texas as you can get. But Texas Tech, they also have a strong fan base and big-time boosters. I do think Texas Tech would make money for the ACC. What about a Kansas State or an Iowa State or a Baylor? And yes, what about a TCU? All of those are possible. So if they get those strong brands and the Big 12 is having to backfill with a San Diego State, a Fresno State, a Boise State, a Memphis, a South Florida, and East Carolina, and Appalachian State, a Marshall. Oh, you talk about worst of the worst. Big 12 gets depleted by the ACC. West Virginia's not on the list, and they have to backfill, and one of those teams is Marshall. Man, that would be a bad day for Golden Blue Dude and for the entire West Virginia fan base. So hopefully worst case scenario doesn't happen. But is it possible? Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think this is a tug of war. Both of these conferences are trying to fill out each other. And it is possible that the Big 12 sent West Virginia to the ACC to try to fill them out to see if there are some teams available that they could pick up to strengthen the east side of the Big 12. Or it could be the other way around. Maybe the ACC was playing cat and mouse with West Virginia to try to figure out if there was going to be any teams available from the Big 12. I guess we'll find out in the future. Hopefully, it's not worst case scenario for West Virginia. I'm not saying I want West Virginia in the ACC or bust. No, I'm okay with West Virginia being in the Big 12 as long as it stays a strong conference and we add teams to strengthen to the east side of the conference. Worst case scenario, yeah, I would definitely be putting out a meltdown video if that happened. Y'all let me know in the comments section. Number one, do you think it's possible that the Big 12 sent West Virginia to the ACC as bait to see if there are teams that are going to be available in the future? Or do you think possibly that it was the ACC playing cat and mouse with the Big 12 to try to figure out if they have some teams available? That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.